Well, this is Unit 8, Section 8.1, Algebra of Functions and Composition. Some things to remember, there's certain things called sum, difference, product, and quotient of functions. Means given two functions f and g, the functions f plus g, f minus g, f times g, and f divided by g are defined as. So I'm showing you that f plus g of x on the outside is the same thing as you writing it as f of x plus g of x. If you're given f minus g with x on the outside, it's equal to f of x minus g of x. F of x times g with x on the outside is f of x times the g of x. F divided by g with x is f of x over g of x, where g of x cannot be 0. Remember the rules. 0 in the denominator is undefined, so make sure that whatever your g of x equation is not equivalent to 0. So we're going to try example 1. And so in example 1, we're given that g of x is equivalent to 4x, h of x represents x squared minus 3x, and k of x is x minus 2. So if we look at A, it says g plus h with x on the outside. Remember, g plus h on the outside is the same thing as saying g of x plus h of x. So we're going to replace the g of x. G of x happens to be 4x. And I'm going to put h of x in parentheses. And the reason I did that is in case this happened to be a minus sign, which means we have to distribute the negative to change the sign. So now we see 4x plus x squared minus 3x, and then just combine your like terms. So we have x squared is the highest power, x squared came first. 4x minus 3x makes it x, and we are finished. Now if we look at B, B says h minus g of x. So again, we repeat the same situation. It's now h of x minus g of x. H of x was x squared minus 3x, minus sign, and then the g of x is now 4x in the bubble. We are changing the signs by distributive property. So we have x squared minus 3x minus a 4x, and then consolidate. So x squared, negative 3x, and negative 3x is negative 7x, and you're finished. Now we proceed to start set C. Set C says g times k of x. So that's the same thing as saying g of x times k of x. So g of x happens to be 4x. And in parentheses, I'm going to stick my k of x, which is x minus 2. You're going to apply the distributive property. So become 4x squared minus 8x, and you've completed your problem. When you proceed to D, it says k over h of x. That's the same thing as saying k of x divided by h of x. So we're going to look at our k of x. K of x is x minus 2. Divide bar, h of x. H of x is x squared minus 3x. So in parentheses, x squared minus 3x. Close it, and you are complete. Composition of functions. So the composition of f and g, denoted as FOG, which is we know as fog, is defined by the rule. FOG of x is f of g of x, provided that g of x is in the domain of f, which that means is that all the values of g of x, all the x values, are part of the domain of the f equation. The composition of g and f, denoted as GOF, is defined by the rule. G of f of x is g of f of x, provided that the f of x is in the domain of g, so it's vice versa. So what does this all entail? So if we look at example 2, it says we're given f of x equals x minus 5, g of x equals x squared, and n of x is the square root of x plus 2. So on A, they want us to find f of g of x. So remember, rewrite this the way it's supposed to be. So that means it's f of g of x. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my f equation, and I plug in the g of x equation into it. So it's saying f of x squared. I replaced by substitution g of x. G of x is x squared. That's the way it comes here. Now I'm going to take my f equation, but it says f of this. So we're going to write our f equation, which is x minus 5. Remember, we're doing f of x. Now f of x, now we're doing f of x squared. So in place of x here, we are sticking x squared in its place. So we finish with x squared minus 5 as an answer. When we look at b, it says g of f of x. So that's saying that they want g of f of x. So again, I'm going to write my g, and in the parentheses, in substitution of f of x was x minus 5. You're going to write your g of x equation, which was x squared. And in place of the x, we're replacing it with x minus 5. So x minus 5 squared. This happens to be your expansion of your your perfect square trinomials, which means it's the same thing as saying x minus 5 times another x minus 5. When you expand it, we get x squared, because it's x to the power of 2. Then the middle piece is negative, because there's a minus sign. It's 2 times a times b. So 2 times x is 2x times 5 is negative 10x. Plus sign. It's the b value squared. Well, 5 squared is 25. Remember the rules from perfect square trinomials. If you see a minus b squared, the formula pattern is a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. And subsequently, if we saw a plus b squared, that is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. These are your rules from perfect square trinomials. Part C says n of f of x. So we have n of f of x. Our n equation, our f of x equation is x minus 5. We're going to take our n equation. N of x is the radical, x plus 2. And we're now going to substitute in for x. So we become square root x minus 5 plus a 2. And finalize it to x minus 3.